Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Elizabeth Aaron. So today, things have been pretty good, and let me tell you why. It has to do with the show. I was looking for a theme for this show today, and I wasn't sure what to talk about. And for whatever reason, the idea of dance gravitated towards me. And I'm not much of a dancer myself, so I thought, well, let me see what are the recent movies on Netflix that have to do with dance. And as I started thinking about this topic, what I realized is dance is always happy. You know, even in tough times, when you dance, it is about lifting your spirit. It's about making things a little bit easier, a little bit brighter. I can't think of a time when, after seeing somebody dance or even trying to dance myself, that I felt worse than when I started. So, the great thing is that with the movies that I'm going to be talking about, there's something uplifting because the focus is on dance. So I'm pretty psyched, and it got me all in a good mood, all the good juju's are going. And so I'm really excited to share what I've learned from these movies with you. Now, one thing I want to point out is the difference between a movie about dance and a musical. So I'm not going to be talking about musicals. Musicals, I think, focus more on the music itself, and there may happen to be dance connected with it. But a dance movie focuses on the dance. Dance is integral to what is happening in the movie, and there probably isn't going to be a lot of singing. Now, the dance will happen to music, but the dance isn't about the music. So, that is one thing I want to be clear on. One other note, I haven't watched a lot of dance movies. There have been a few that have been memorable and that I've liked, but recently, most of them seem kind of like teeny bopper films and things that were not memorable. So the movies I'm going to talk about today, we'll see if they pass the memorability test. And we'll see if they have some more gravitas than maybe some of the more fluffy dance movies that have been out. So yes, today we will be covering recent dance movies that have been added to Netflix. In the first segment of the show, I'll be talking about the movie Feel the Beat. In the second segment, I'll be giving you my thoughts on the movie Strung Free Dance. And in the third segment of the show, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the movie Yeh Ballet. Then stick around for the end of the show when I'll be sharing 10 of my favorite dance movies. And one more note before diving in. In the last episode of the podcast, I had mentioned how I had yet to find a movie that I felt I should tell everybody you had to go out and see it. Well, that's going to change with this episode. I'm not going to tell you which movie it is, but one of the movies I thought was just amazing. And I'm really excited to share it, so stay tuned. And now let's start with the first movie, Feel the Beat. Feel the Beat is a family comedy. It's a teen movie. It's a Netflix movie. It came out in 2020. It's rated TVG, and it's an hour and 49 minutes long. It is directed by Alyssa Down. She has directed many short films and several episodes of different TV series, including the series Offspring and Confess, and she's directed the movies The Black Balloon and The Honor List. She's won a number of awards for The Black Balloon, including Best Direction. The actors in the movie, the main actors are Sophia Carson. Her non-stage name is Sophia Decorat Shar. She's Colombian American. She plays the character April, and she's been in many short films and TV series episodes and TV movies. And this appearance seems to be her first major movie. This movie also stars Wolfgang Novogratz. He plays Nick, and he has been in the movies Yes, God, Yes, The Last Summer, and The Half of It. Now, The Half of It is a movie I briefly touched on in my podcast on July 10th. That was a really fun movie, and honestly, I did not pick up until I looked on the Internet Movie Database that the same actor played both characters. He looked different, and the characters were quite different. So, my hat's off to him. Another actor in the movie is Donna Lynn Champlin. She plays Miss Barb, and she has been in TV episodes of Submissions Only and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and the movies Downsizing, and with Wolfgang Novogratz, she was in Yes, God, Yes. She also won a Gracie Allen Award for Outstanding Female Actor in a Supporting Role in a Comedy or Musical. And another actor I want to touch on played Frank, April's dad, and his name is Enrico Colantoni. And he has been in TV series like Westworld, American Gothic, and Bad Blood, and the movies A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Galaxy Quest, Full Frontal, and Weather Girl. He's won a couple of awards, including the Canadian Screen Awards for Best Performance by an Actor, and a continuing leading dramatic role for his role in an episode of Flashpoint. Now, Netflix's summary about the movie is, after blowing a Broadway audition, a self-centered dancer reluctantly returns home and agrees to coach a squad of young misfits for a big competition. That's a decent sum up, but there's so much more that can be told. The movie starts with the character April. She's a dancer, and she has a big audition. If she gets the part, she's going to be in a corps of dancers on Broadway. So the stakes are high, and she's really looking forward to having some major success. The morning of her audition starts out where she gets a letter from her landlord essentially saying that she's past due with rent. So she goes to the audition. As she heads out, it's pouring rain, and she needs a cab. And she positions herself because she sees that there's a cab coming, and then across the street is an older lady. And the older lady is also positioning herself to get a cab. And so ultimately they race for it, and it turns out that April kind of steals the cab from the older lady. So she gets to the audition, she does well, she passes the first round of auditions, and then she has to wait for the approval of Ruth Zimmer, who is the high-up producer of the show, and she's the one who gives a seal of approval. She walks in, and lo and behold, she is the person who April stole the cab from. Not cool. Ruth Zimmer vows to ruin April's life and makes sure that April will never be able to perform on Broadway or anywhere ever again. It is the ruin of April's career. All because she was a little selfish in wanting to get the cab and get to the audition on time. No more transpires with Ruth, but I'm not going to give it away. I want to leave some surprises for you, for sure. April returns to her apartment, only to find out, guess what? She's locked out because she didn't pay the rent. She then talks to her dad on the phone and says everything is fine, but her dad picks up on it, and he tells her, come on home. What we find out is April's mom left when she was young, and we don't really know why she left or where she went, but she is no longer essentially part of the family, and her father raised her. And so she is dealing with this abandonment issue that had come up from years before. And home for her is rural Wisconsin. Her dad has a barn. There's a lot of country land. It's very different from life in New York. And people know who she is. She's the one who went to New York to become a dancer on Broadway. So she has this reputation to uphold. And meanwhile, the fact that she was essentially kicked off Broadway, she's having to contend with how her reputation may be tarnished. So she goes to the local grocery store with her dad, and she runs into who but Miss Barb. Miss Barb was her dance teacher back in this little town. And Miss Barb is so excited to see her. So something to say about Miss Barb. As I mentioned, she's played by Donna Lynn Champlin, and at first she is very over the top. She's very much like a caricature, but she's a riot. She brought in some great comedic humor, and it balanced out April's down in the doldrums point of view pretty well. I am glad to say that the character of Miss Barb did not sustain this level of energy throughout the entire movie. That would have been a little too much. But as with Miss Barb, as well as a few of the other characters, we start seeing more of their dimensions come out. They each have a story arc, and we each get to see them learn and grow and change in their own way. So that's all great. Now back to the grocery store. Miss Barb asks April to come talk to the girls in her class because she will be so inspiring for the girls. And April really doesn't want to do it. It feels like it's beneath her. But she decides to do Miss Barb a favor and go ahead and help her out. And she shows up, and she's pretty resentful the entire time. And then she leaves and runs into her ex-boyfriend. And the reason that he's her ex-boyfriend is because she sent him a text saying that it was over. Not great. And so a pattern is emerging that now that she's come home, people who have seen her true colors, well, if she wasn't so successful as a dancer, I'm not sure that they would really like her. And so throughout the movie, she gets to redeem herself with all of them. Miss Barb actually asks if she would be willing to teach a class. And she says no until she gets a brochure about this contest Miss Barb tells her about. Her dad sees the brochure, reads the information about it, and we find out that one of the judges of this contest happens to be a Broadway director that April would really love to perform in front of and audition for. That changes everything. She now has something that she wants to work towards. That's the setup. And now we get to see how she does in teaching the girls, how they do in the competitions. Can they make it to this big competition because they have different layers of competition to pass before they can achieve this national competition where this director will be a judge. And we get to see if things start shifting a little bit with her old boyfriend and how things go with her dad. So I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but we get to see a metamorphosis around the characters and dance. But truly, this is April's story. And the story is about how she was very self-centered around her dance and how she was going to achieve fame. And could she be humbled and be a person who looks out for other people? And it seems that each of these characters is pointing things out to her so that she has to learn and grow and change into somebody who is a little bit more thoughtful and well-rounded. It's a pretty simple premise. And personally, I'm one who likes movies that are a little more complicated, but seeing as this is a family movie, and I do think there's something fun for everybody in this movie, likely it's going to be more attractive to kids, tweens, teens, and so this theme is not off the mark. It is a good theme for younger people to be aware of and to look at in themselves. Some more thoughts about the movie. April's dad is a really nice guy, and he definitely has words of wisdom that help her out. It makes me wonder how April ended up being kind of a jerk in the first place. I know her mom left, and maybe she was resentful of that, but still, in this small town where everyone is so nice, I just didn't quite buy that she was a jerk. She's also a really gorgeous young woman who, in appearance, seems like she has everything together. And I just didn't quite buy that sort of meanness that they're trying to bring out. She did okay pulling it off, for the most part, but in terms of just the character development, I didn't completely buy that. I just didn't see such a cool dad raising someone who had the character qualities that April was trying to pull off. And it seems from the start, April and Nick have a thing. Even though she texted him and told him that she didn't want to see him anymore, there's still clearly chemistry there. And so I'm not sure why she would have just texted him. Why not just have a normal conversation with him that she has this dream and she's going for it? So again, that part of the story didn't completely hold up for me. What I did like was that Nick knew how to put her in her place, and that was really great to see. He had no qualms about confronting her and pushing her back, and that was great to see. I think that was really wonderful role modeling, actually. Now, something else about April. She is, as I said, utterly beautiful, and she has a crazy body. She is a great dancer, and her body just flows. She has a kind of body that is a model's body. And I had mixed feelings about that because you want to be able to show that any girl can dance. The good thing, though, is all of the young girls that she did teach were very different. They had different weights, they had different abilities, one of them even was deaf. And it was good to see that it was demonstrated at least somewhere that anybody can dance, and it's accepted across the board. Another little issue I had with the movie is the fact that much of life seems perfect. April's contending with some of her inner demons, and maybe a couple of other characters are, but for the most part, everything seems status quo. And life, I think, is just messier than that. And in that way, the movie is not super realistic, but it serves its purpose. The first 2/3 through, I really went with the movie and went with its ups and downs, and I liked a lot of what I was seeing. And it's not that I didn't like it at the end, but there was this sort of competitive recital dance. It was beautiful, and some things happened that helped move April towards a goal that she had set out for herself. I'm not going to give it away, but things seemed to come together for April pretty flawlessly, a little way too easily than would ever happen in real life. So it leaves you with a kind of a feel-good thing, but it ended up being predictable and unrealistic. There are also a few little technical glitches. For example, something that was a little symbolic was planted somewhere, and it just seemed a little too magical the way that it was there, right at the right moment, at the right time. Overall in this movie, I felt the acting was good. The characters had a good banter, the characters were well drawn, and they're all pretty interesting. I think for the most part, the screenplay was pretty solid. Except for some of these little things where the timing happens so perfectly and things happen a little magically, the script pulled it off, and it's hard to tell how much of this was direction versus what specifically the script said. And of course, this is a dance movie, so it's important to talk about the dance. One thing I liked about this movie is that the dance was not overpowering. While dance was integral to the story, it didn't dominate the story, and we got to see young kids learning how to dance, and pulling some really cool stuff off. Another thing I liked about the dance is that while April is supposed to be the spectacular dance, there are a few times where she didn't quite pull it off, so it showed her human side as a dancer. And then the kids in the story, of course, as actors, they probably needed to know how to dance prior to taking the role, and they really did a great job of showing themselves as beginning dancers and getting more and more advanced. There's a whole fun section where there's a point where a male character needs to hold a female character high up in the air. And just seeing the characters try to grapple with this and deal with the boy-girl dynamic, well, there's just a bunch of things going on here that makes watching the dance fun. It wasn't just about, are they going to get the dance steps right? There's room for being human and celebrating dance for what it was. And it is clear that April's character is the best dancer. There were moments where she really did her stuff. And it was really uplifting to watch. When I first saw this movie and saw the trailer, I really wasn't sure how excited I was going to be about it. I liked it. I was entertained. It kept me interested and engaged, and I wanted to see what was going to happen. So I think it did a good job. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a fantastic, flawless movie, I'd give it a 6, 6.5. So especially if you have kids at home, kids who are coming of age, turning into teenagers, I think this would be a fun movie to watch with them. And while this movie is leaning more towards girls, the dad is a great role, the boyfriend is a great role, the director is a great role. I think there are some key roles for men that can help make this interesting for whether you're a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. Something for everyone, as I said. And all around, it's a movie that's kind of just about going for it. So if you're looking to get energized and motivated, this is a fun movie to do it with. Now stay tuned for the next segment of the show when I'll be looking at the movie Strung Free Dance. We'll start in after the break.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome to the second segment of the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the last segment, I talked about the movie Feel the Beat. I'm now going to discuss the movie Strung Free Dance. A movie came out in 2016 called High Strung, and I know this movie is related to that one. But I didn't see the first one. And I know the premise of that movie is a ballerina falls in love with a violinist who is struggling, and there is some similarity to this movie, where the dancer falls for a struggling pianist. What I can tell you, though, is that this movie, High Strung Free Dance, can stand on its own. You didn't need to see the first movie in the series in order to appreciate this one. So again, the movie is High Strung Free Dance. It's a drama. It's about showbiz. While it looks like it was filmed in 2018, based on my research, it apparently came out in October of 2019, and it was out for streaming in February of this year. It's rated TV-14 because there's some language. It's an hour and 43 minutes long. The director is Michael Damian, and he co-wrote the script with Janine Damian. The key actors in the movie are Juliette Doherty, who plays the protagonist Barlow, and she was in the movie Driven to Dance and The Accompanist, and she's also been in episodes of the TV series Strange Girl in a Strange Land. Also in the movie is the actor Thomas Doherty, who plays Xander. It appears there is no relation between him and Julia Doherty. Thomas Doherty is mostly known for television, and most recently he's been in episodes of the TV show Gossip Girl, and he is actually from Edinburgh, Scotland. Another actor in the movie is Harry Jarvis. He plays Charlie, a piano player, and he was born in London, and he pulled off an American accent really well. He has been in the movies Footsteps of Angels and Spaceship, and he's been in the TV series The Dead Girls Detective Agency. The biggest name probably in the movie is Jane Seymour. She plays Oksana, who is Barlow's mom, and she is well known for the series Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, for which she had won a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actress in a Television Series Drama. She was in the original High Strung movie, and she's been in movies like Better Start Running, Mistrust, and Little Italy. So I mentioned that I liked the last movie that I reviewed called Feel the Beat. It had a lot of good things going for it. And then I saw this movie. This movie was much more polished. I felt the acting was much more smooth, the dancers were more professional, and the story just seemed to flow more easily. There seemed to be twists and turns that worked more, that I was more surprised by, that seemed more realistic. So let me dive into what the story is about. There is a dancer named Barlow. Her dream is to make a living as a dancer. And right now she's working at a company making sales calls. It's not her thing, and she doesn't seem to really thrive at doing it. And then there is Charlie. Charlie works for a local deli delivering food, and he is a pianist. And he similarly is looking for an opportunity to make a living as a pianist solely. The movie starts out and you see these two characters separately on their own life track. And you're not really clear why, but as would probably be a little predictable, they eventually end up crossing paths. The way they cross paths, though, was not expected. It was quite an unexpected twist, and I thought that was great. Meanwhile, separately, you see Barlow and Charlie taking big risks and not going by the book in order to find ways to land roles that are going to lead them closer to their dream. Once they land these roles, it turns out together they are in this show called Free Dance, and there's a lot of kind of soap opera things going on. It's clear that Charlie likes Barlow. Barlow seems pretty non-committal. But then something happens with the director of the show, whose name is Xander. That's who Thomas Doherty plays. And so it's not clear if Charlie and Barlow are ever going to come together. But because the movie sets you up so that you see each of these characters separately, you get kind of attached to them, and you want success for them. So you're hoping and rooting for them to come together. As it turns out, Barlow has been trained by her mom, played by Jane Seymour. And Jane Seymour's character, Oksana, is a well-known dance instructor. She trained Barlow to be a star. Yet Barlow is of her own mind, and she and Oksana have an ongoing conflict around who's really in control of Barlow's life and what she really wants. So often dance movies are about winning a championship or getting that big audition to get into a school program or proving yourself somehow. What's different about this movie is that it's more about the show business. Once Charlie and Barlow get into the free dance theater company, their creativity pours out and they're showing their mastery of the arts. It is not that straightforward because there's a lot of power playing going on. Xander, the director, and the producer of the show, as well as the person who is supposedly going to be the star of the show, they keep changing their minds, doing things differently, never being predictable, and so much of Barlow and Charlie's survival in this program has to do with can they navigate these personalities and all the monkey wrenches they keep throwing into the mix. As I recount it now, this movie sounds actually a lot more shallow than I remembered it when I was watching it. I felt very engrossed in everything that was happening, and I wanted to know what was going to happen next. Although everyone was beautiful, everything looked perfect, it didn't seem like the most realistic scenario. Some things that I did like had to do with some of the side stories. For example, Charlie delivers food to this elderly woman. She happens to have been a great pianist, and she has a big piano in her main hall. And when he delivers the food, he can't help himself because he's so enticed by playing piano that he starts playing. Well, she calls from the other room, and she has some hang-ups. She doesn't want to be seen by anybody, and it's rare that she even communicates with anyone. But she can talk about music. And so she has this language that she can share with Charlie. And it seems like she's a really old, lonely woman who doesn't have a lot of friends, that she doesn't go out. She just doesn't want to show her face anywhere. And it's clear that she becomes pretty attached to Charlie. But when Charlie starts being more successful and is not able to drop by as often, well, this impacts her. And she gets motivated to maybe start thinking about changing her ways. It's lovely to see this character melt and to see how she and Charlie form a friendship around the love of music. And one of my favorite things is she talks to him about how he can change the way the piano sounds by attaching these different objects to the piano strings. And it really makes his creativity come out, and it's just fun to watch him as an artist work. I'm very curious to know if the actor himself is an accomplished pianist or if he was kind of faking it and they put in music. It was hard to tell. So if they pulled that off, that's great. But if Harry Jarvis, the actor who plays Charlie, is as good at the piano as Charlie is, well, then he definitely has a great niche cut out for himself. Another side story has to do with Barlow. So I guess a common or perhaps stereotypical thing that happens to artists in New York is that they're not able to afford their rent. And as we saw that happen with April in Feel the Beat, well, something similar happens to Barlow. She has given her rent money to her roommate to pay the landlord. And for the past few months, she didn't pay the landlord. And Barlow comes home to find out that her roommate has completely moved out and that she herself has to move out because the landlord has already rented the apartment because they are so behind on their rent. So she has to find a new place to live. And as it turns out, once she gets into this dance company, there are a couple of other dancers who are looking for a roommate. And so we get to see them interact, we get to see how they fit together in a living situation, and there's a really fun scene where they all dance together. And it turns out another of their roommates is an opera singer who is going to school at Juilliard, and she gets to sing opera and kind of back up the music to their dancing. So there's some really fun treats in there. Overall, I felt the acting was quite good in this movie. the actors were convincing. I appreciated their emotional range. I went through their emotional journey with them. It moved me. I have to say, I was more moved in this movie than I was with Feel the Beat. And each character brought different strengths to their role. I would say of all the actors, I felt Juliette Doherty, who played Barlow, was probably the weakest. And I'm not clear if it's that she was weak, or if she was really playing the character, who was probably a little bit more shy, laid back, quiet, pensive. Her reactions seemed smaller than in some of the other actors, and I would have liked to have seen her have stronger opinions about things. She had more things going on inside, and along the way I was feeling what it was like to walk in her shoes. At the same time, I felt that there should have been some stronger reactions to things than she provided. I enjoyed seeing Jane Seymour on the screen. I remember seeing her in television years ago, and always liking her. Something that I think is so interesting about acting is that you get to actually see an actor grow up and age before your eyes as you watch their filmography or get to see them in different things. And I think she's aging well. Her main essence is still there, and I like that. And I like the role she plays in this movie as Barlow's mom. She plays the tough master teacher, and at the same time, she's trying to negotiate how to be a mom. The relationship is muddied by this expectation that Barlow is going to have a fantastic career. And of course, Barlow doesn't want her mom's help in creating a career. She wants to earn it by herself. She doesn't want anybody to know that her mom is Oksana, because Oksana is known throughout the industry. And as with these movies, there's a finale where there's usually some kind of big production. And with each of these dance movies, that is the case. I won't explain how, but finally the producer of the big show that's being put on finds out that Barlow is Oksana's daughter, and that was a big surprise to him. And it's pretty neat that Barlow achieved what she set out to do, which was to have an accomplishment that was all her own and not reliant on her mom. And I want to get back to the actors, but while I'm talking about the big finale here, I just want to say that it was a spectacle. It was beautiful and something to watch, and I think it's worth watching the movie to wait for that ending. It's full of surprises, and it's great to see how the work that they were doing on the show actually comes to fruition. And it seems like all the scenes where they are doing work, it really was towards this end. That part did feel realistic to me, and I really appreciated that. So back to the actors, as I mentioned, I felt that they overall did a good job. They carried the movie, the roles were well defined, I knew who the characters were, and I came to care about them. That's what got me so engrossed. I was going on the emotional roller coaster ride with them all. I cared what happened next. But something that's interesting, as I looked up the actors on the Internet Movie Database, it appears that just about all of them are from the United Kingdom. Now, this is a movie that's taking place in New York, and other than Xander, who does have, I believe, an English accent, the rest of them pull off American accents. And I bought that they were Americans. I find that fascinating. Overall, the movie held together well. I'd be interested to see what the earlier version of High Strung had, to find out if it followed a similar formula or not. But ultimately, that doesn't really matter here for this movie. There's some things that I felt didn't fit all that well. There's a guy that Charlie worked with at the diner, and you hardly saw him before. And at one point, and it seems for quite a few minutes, you see him do this kind of hip-hop routine down the sidewalk, and he's singing this song, and it's cutting back and forth between him and other things happening, and it was kind of scratching my head as to why so much focus had been given to him for just these few minutes. It felt like this was some filler, or his agent had struck up some kind of deal to ensure that he was going to have some decent screen time. That's how it felt. It felt very out of place. There's another place where the timing is off. Barlow has to get out of her apartment because she's being evicted on a Friday, and yet she starts her new job in the dance company on the following Monday, and yet we don't see her have a place to live until after that Monday. So it's a little bit confusing, and it's also highly convenient that she finds a place to live so quickly. I think it would have been more interesting if she couldn't find a place to live, and here she is working at this dance company, starting out, putting in these long hours, probably feeling sore, and not having a place to stay. Where would she live? And that question wasn't answered. It was just a highly convenient situation where she could move in with a couple of the other dancers in the dance company. And of course, she perfectly fit in with them. Something else I felt that this movie did really well is the cuts between the scenes. Something would happen in one scene, it would end at the perfect moment before it switched to another scene. And then that one would be short and switch to another scene. And then it would go back to the first scene that it had started on. And this way it had this motion, almost like a dance in and of itself, of the scenes that kept you gripped and wanting to know what was going to happen next. And in this way, it felt like there were a lot of little scenes. There were maybe bigger scenes cut short with interspersions of smaller parts of the other scenes. I can't say that this is something that I've seen frequently, or if I have, it's probably been more in television. I really liked it. It kept me interested in what every character was doing, how they were moving their own story forward, and so it kept me enthralled. I'm curious if it was shot purposely that way, or if it was just edited that way. But either way, it worked for me as an audience member where the story built for me very quickly and kept me engaged. So you'd probably want to see this movie if you enjoy dance. Just watching it for the dancing, I think, is worth it. There's some really great moves here, some really beautiful choreography. But also, if you just like to see people's interactions and trying to figure out how to make things work, if you want to see artists in practice, well, this is a good movie for that. Also, if you like hints of romance and want to see where it's going to go, this is a fun movie for that as well. Something else that I want to point out is there is this finale of the show that finally goes on. And I don't want to ruin the end, but I guess what I'll say is the show was amazing and it was wonderful to watch it all the way through. And after the show, I was looking for something more. Something felt a little unresolved for me. I have a feeling that how the show was written down in the script and on paper, it made a lot of sense. I think the reality was that it didn't play out exactly the way they expected. On the other hand, by the end of the movie, I felt utterly moved, uplifted, and actually exhilarated. Any movie that can do that for me, especially in the times that we're in right now, when we can use an extra boost, well, I'm all for it. And so in that way, I feel like this movie succeeded. So would I recommend this movie? Was it fantastic? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it was super entertaining, and I'd give it a 7. And while I liked the movie Feel the Beat, this movie seemed a little more grown up around the dance. And while I think this could also be entertaining for teenagers, I think that it's probably more geared towards young adults and adults. Now stay tuned for the next segment of the show when I'll be looking at the movie Yeh Ballet after the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thanks for joining me for the third segment of the show. I am your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the last segment, I talked about the movie Strung Free Dance. In this segment, I'm going to discuss the movie Yeh Ballet. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled Y-E-H and then the word ballet, B-A-L-L-E-T. This is an Indian movie. It's a mostly Hindi language movie. It's a drama and it's rated TVMA, in other words, for mature audiences. It's just under 2 hours long, and it's new on Netflix. It's a 2020 movie. The movie was written and directed by Suni Terapuravala. She mostly has writing credits to her name. Another movie that she directed is called Little Zuzu. She wrote the screenplay for Mississippi Masala, if you liked that movie. And her screenplay won an award at the Venice Film Festival. Yeh Ballet is based on a true story, and she also directed a documentary of this same story. The key actors in the movie are Julian Sands. He has been around a long time and has done some great things. He's known for the movies A Room with a View, Ocean's 13, and The Phantom of the Opera. He's been on a lot of television, and he had a shared win in the International Film Festival for Peace, Inspiration, and Equality for the movie The Maiden and the Princess. The other two main roles are played by actors for whom this is their first film. The actor Manish Chauhan plays Nishu, and the actor Achintya Bose plays Asif. At the start of the show, I gave a heads up that there was a movie that I was going to be talking about, which would probably be my first one on these podcasts so far, that I would say, you must go see it. Well, not a surprise probably at this point. This is the movie. It was so good, and for so many reasons. Even with these newcomers, the acting was great. I was enthralled by these characters and their stories. Perhaps on some level it helped that most of the movie was subtitled, and I didn't understand the main language. Maybe I couldn't pick up on some of the verbal cues, but all of the emotional cues were there. I love Julian Sands in this movie. I recognized his name, and I couldn't place him, so I looked him up. And I remembered him playing with Helena Bonham Carter in A Room with a View. And wow, what a different part this is in this movie. He plays a much older man. I could not have recognized him. He plays an Israeli ballet teacher. Just one of those master teachers that knows everything and can see promise in somebody. I'm reminded that J.K. Simmons won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar as he played a master teacher in the movie Whiplash. And I just kept thinking, I think there's definitely a possibility that Julian Sands could be up for an Oscar for this role. Personally, I hope so. So this movie to me is like one of those really juicy good books that you feel really sad when it ends. I just wanted the story to keep on going. So now that I've given you a little preview of how I feel about it, I'm going to dive in and tell you more about the movie. This is the story of two young men who live in the slums in India. They are very, very poor. And for both of them, their families are just scraping things together in order to eke out a semblance of some kind of normal life. First, there's Asif. We see him hanging out with his buddies. They're kind of hoodlums, and they like to break dance and pull pranks on each other. Asif is kind of up to no good, but it is clear that he has a talent for dancing. Now, as he and his friends get together, they happen to catch a TV show where it shows a young man who is vying to win a dance competition. He does well in the competition, he gets noticed, and someone who runs a dance school in Mumbai, where this is all taking place, approaches him and suggests that he can go far if he comes to their dance school. The only thing is, the expectations in his family is that he is going to go to college. His dad drives a cab, his mom is a tailor, and they don't have much money. And so his parents are set on whatever he does, he has to be sure that he's going to be successful at it, and dancing just isn't seen as a priority or in the cards. Meanwhile, Asif's family is dependent on an uncle who is Muslim and has very strict ideas about behavior and how to live life based on the Muslim religion. And anytime Asif or his brother or anyone in his family is out of line, there is this fear that they are going to lose any support that the uncle is giving. I don't want to give away how things transpire, because it's really fun to watch that. And if you choose to see this movie, as I recommend that you do, I want you to experience these things firsthand. Suffice it to say, both of these boys, in their different ways, end up looking into going to this dance school. And one of the main attractions for the school is this famous dance teacher, a ballet teacher named Saul Aaron, is coming from America to teach ballet to the Indian students. And when we get to first meet Saul, well, he makes quite an impression. And not in the most positive light, but he is a master teacher. He cares about ballet. That is pretty much all he cares about. The art, the practice, the aim for perfection, these are the things that matter to him. His entry into India and to this dance school is a rough one. It seems like the whole thing is just one big disaster and a big mistake. And both Nishu and Asif come at the idea of dancing ballet from very different places and different desires. But over time, as there's more of a routine, Saul Aaron starts identifying who is talented and who he wants to work with. And as I'm sure is probably not a surprise, we get to see this appreciation, this bonding over a kind of rocky road between Saul Aaron, Nishu, and Asif. Asif and Nishu kind of have opposite stories, where Asif at first doesn't really care about Saul Aaron or about ballet. He doesn't know much about it, and he has to grow into it, and soon he has a reason for wanting to pursue it more seriously. The Nishu, who isn't maybe quite as natural at ballet as Asif is, he is driven. He is super responsible and hardworking and just really wants to know what his potential is as a ballet dancer. And as these two young men find their way, eventually their paths intersect where they are at the same point. And then they start bonding and working together and growing together. And meanwhile, Saul Aaron is bowled over. He did not expect to find the talent that he did here in Mumbai. And he is truly helping them try to reach their full potential. There's so much good stuff here, from seeing the struggles that each of these boys has with their family in terms of being seen as a dancer, to seeing the changes that they go through and how it impacts their life with their friends. Each of these characters experiences highs and lows, and we go on a journey with each of them individually and then as a group. And just as their own bonding and caring for each other grows, we as the audience start bonding and caring for these characters as well. I don't think I mentioned yet, but this is actually a Netflix movie. And I say good on Netflix. This is a really great film. Now, the description that Netflix gave for the movie is, discovered by an eccentric ballet master, two gifted Mumbai teens face bigotry and disapproval as they pursue their dancing dreams. I think that's a broad overview. When I decided to look at dancing movies, I thought I'd just look at the ones that were most recently on the Netflix platform, because they're the newest and probably a lot of people hadn't necessarily seen them yet. And when I saw this and I saw the title, I just didn't know what to think. And I read that and I thought, oh, it sounds maybe a little stereotypical. That is not at all how I found it to be. I found it to be fresh. The way that the characters came to cross paths, I loved. There's something that I really appreciate about what movies can do. There are times in people's lives where they can reach some kind of pinnacle, where it feels like there's something bigger than the ordinary, that we get to see greatness happen. And this kind of happens when people find their path and they truly evolve to be the best that they can be within their circumstances. Something I really appreciate about this movie is both of these boys come from extreme poverty. They're coming kind of from the ashes, from a life that is incomplete. They have completely different attitudes about life. They have different religious backgrounds. And yet, as they strive for something bigger, and as they bond with this master teacher who is bigger than them and can lead them to greatness, they start finding this within themselves. And what this allowed me to do as an audience member, and I believe will do for anyone who watches this movie, you get to walk in the shoes of people who are striving for greatness, and you get to feel that potential within yourself. So it's very inspiring. And as I said, as the characters start growing and learning more about each other and bonding more, we're following them in their footsteps, so we feel bonded to them as well. This is the first movie in a long time where after I saw it, I felt excited. I was just excited that it was a great movie. The kind that I could see over and over again and not get tired of it and keep learning from it. The kind where I feel like I went on a long journey and that I came out the other side a changed person. So I think this movie totally succeeds. So much in this movie I didn't anticipate. I couldn't have anticipated. The acting is great. I mentioned Julian Sands earlier, but he actually has an Israeli background in this movie, his character does, and he has an Israeli accent, and he pulls that off really well. His character has layers and depth, as do all of the characters. And each of the characters was placed so well in their environment that I never questioned why they were doing anything or saying anything. It just became very clear, and it didn't have to be something spoken or out of some kind of speech. And there were some very touching moments. In particular, there is a lot of vulnerability among the male characters. There's a point where the boys are curious about this box that Saul Aaron has. It looks like it's handmade, but it's beautiful. And Saul Aaron makes it clear that he doesn't owe anybody an explanation about anything. But once he starts bonding with the boys, he finally decides that he's going to talk to them about this box. And he explains how he got it, that it came through his family, and why it's special to him. And at last he opens the box and shows the boys what's inside. I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil it. But it creates meaning for the boys and some kind of mystique and helps them understand who Saul is and what is important to him and that he's a tender soul. They also ask him, how did he land in Mumbai to teach ballet there? And he talks about how he couldn't get a job anywhere else. They really feel for him because they know that he is teaching a lot of students who have no money, but that it shows his dedication to the art. The money doesn't matter to him. What's important is the beauty and the art. Now, as I talk about this, I think, is this movie for everyone? I want it to be for everyone because I do think it is a really great movie. But if, for example, you're a male and you don't care so much about ballet, there's such intense backgrounds of these male characters that carry through the film that I think anybody can relate to on different levels, that I think there's going to be something there for everyone. And if you're an artist, I think hands down this is a movie that you should watch. Every art requires practice, repetition, striving for something bigger than you are, and this shows you right before your eyes the metamorphosis of these two young men who are going for something. And it is quite incredible to me how the movie shows them growing and changing and becoming better. You see their bodies changing over time. There's even a part where there's a question about where do you draw the line? At what point do you say, no, I can skip practice today? Where is your dedication to the people in your life, your family, your friends? At what point Nishu's sister becomes ill? And Nishu has to be with her. And when Saul insists that he's making the wrong decision, Nishu is put in a position where he has to step up and make a decision about what is most important to him. And that decision is not easy. People in his family have a say. But while he's riding this roller coaster ride, he is amazingly given an opportunity to showcase his dancing to a regular audience. And this gives him the information that he needs so he knows whether he's going to move forward and how he's going to move forward. I just love the side stories of each of these characters and how each of those stories helps them grow, but also kind of shows how the universe is pushing them in a particular direction, and it's a direction that calls for them to move forward in their art. When I looked at what the director had done before and saw that she actually filmed a documentary about this story, I'm so curious to see it now. I'm curious to see what she took and put in the script that was fictionalized or if everything was based on what truly happened. And as I mentioned earlier, as is the case with the 3 movies that I'm looking at today, most dance movies will have a culmination where there has to be some kind of final performance. And in each case, it has a different take. So in the first movie that I looked at today, Feel the Beat, it was this dance contest, and we're looking to see if this group is going to win the dance contest, but also if it's going to help the main character grow. In the second movie, the culmination is a dance performance that this group of characters has been working on for a long time, and there will be curiosity about who's going to star in that show, and how is the show actually going to look, and how will this performance affect those characters, based on the characters they're playing in the dance routine, as well as the characters they're playing as themselves. In this movie, I felt it was handled the best of the 3. This dance performance that's going to happen is part of sort of a recital for the dance school. And yet, there are elements to it that are a surprise, that are unexpected, and that raise the stakes really high. And the recital doesn't completely resolve the issue at that moment. And I really like that it is not the final chapter. The recital is really just one more incident that helps move the story along. It makes it much more reality-based. So there's a lot that I liked about this movie, and frankly, I can't think of anything I didn't like. Actually, there is one criticism that I can think of, and I don't feel it has so much to do with the story and how it holds together. The fact is, most of this movie is not in English, and so there are subtitles, and especially at the beginning, the subtitles flash really quickly, and I kept missing what was being said, and I had to pause the film, go back, and take a look so that I was sure that I was understanding everything that was being said. So if you're not big on subtitles, that's something to take into account, but my wish would be that that wouldn't be the thing that would keep you from seeing such a good movie. I'm going to give this one a solid 10, and I highly recommend that you check this one out. Really, truly. It was just such a delightful surprise. So stay tuned for the final segment of the show, when I'll be sharing 10 of my favorite dance movies.
Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Welcome to the last segment of the show. I am your host, Elizabeth Aaron. In the prior segment, I looked at the movie Yeh Ballet. In this segment, I'm going to share 10 of my favorite dance movies. As I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen a lot of dance movies, and many of them that I did see were more like fluff movies where I was just looking for some entertainment. These were not very memorable. They were pretty formulaic, there was some love story attached. It was usually about one dance team trying to outdo another dance team, or some people going for a competition. I'd find them fun to watch because dancing is not necessarily my thing, but I couldn't tell you the title, who was in them, any great details or originality. So when it comes to sharing my favorite dance movies, the qualities that I'm looking for to share with you are, were these movies memorable? Was there something unique about them? Did the characters stand out somehow, or did I remember who actually starred in them? In a lot of cases, I'd say these movies were memorable, though I didn't necessarily remember everything about them. The thing that probably stuck with me most was the feeling that I was left with when the movie was over. Now, there are some dance movies that were memorable, but were not necessarily my favorites. and there are other movies where there was some dance in it that I truly did remember. So I thought I'd first start with naming some of those movies. And there are also some that were musicals. At the top of the show, I talked about how I was going to talk about dance movies, not musicals. And yet, it is important to mention that many musicals have some great dance. And so I'm going to mention some of those right now too. And I will get to my list of 10 favorites in a few moments, but I wanted to mention these in case you're looking for more than just the 10 that are my personal favorites. So a few movies that I consider more musicals that have some great dancing include Singin' in the Rain, old classic, West Side Story, which has themes of racism, which would be very appropriate for today, not to mention some great singing and great songs. And there's Fame. This arguably is a dance movie, but it also has a lot of singing. It's all about everything it takes to be an entertainer and get fame. Some of the scenes are amazingly choreographed. And then there's the movie Hairspray, which is just a lot of fun. There's a lot of dancing and a lot of singing, and in my book is more comedic and cartoonish. And keep in mind there are two versions of Hairspray. There was one that came out in 1988, and then it was remade in 2007. And the version in 2007 stars John Travolta. And back in the day, he was quite the dancing and singing powerhouse. Besides Hairspray, he was known for Grease and Saturday Night Fever. I have a feeling some of these feel pretty dated at this point, but if you're interested in it for the dance, there's some great stuff in these. There's another movie that I remember that is not necessarily the most fantastic story. It is kind of formulaic, and I don't know why this movie sticks out in my mind, but I thought I'd share it because it does have some memorable dancing, and it's called Ugly Coyote, and it's about a young woman who's a songwriter who tries to make it big. There's another movie that I want to mention because I feel this movie has to be mentioned. Natalie Portman won an Oscar for Best Actress for the movie Black Swan. It is an intensive ballet movie, but honestly, it wasn't one of my favorites. Natalie Portman does a great job, and I know a number of people who have called this a masterpiece, and it probably deserves that title. And yet, it felt like a tragedy to me. Earlier on, I talked about how dancing is uplifting, and certainly the movie ended with me having a lot of different emotions, as well as questioning what had actually happened at the end. It hadn't been completely clear to me, and I remember having many conversations with people, each of us talking about how we took the ending. But of all the dance movies that I have seen, this is the one that left me feeling a little bit more ambivalent. I have a feeling the movie wasn't set up to be that way, but that is how I was left feeling, and that's why I'm not putting it on my list of favorites, but it is a standout dancing movie. And the last movie that I want to talk about before starting my list of 10 is not a musical at all. It's a movie that dates back to 1992 and stars Al Pacino. It's called Scent of a Woman. Al Pacino plays Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade. He is a blind man, and there's one scene where he gets to dance a tango with a young woman, and it's just a breathtaking scene. If you don't want to see the whole movie but are interested in seeing the dance scene, you can just Google dance scene Scent of a Woman or the tango from Scent of a Woman, and you can find it on YouTube. It's quite an intricate and romantic scene, and I watched it again before talking about it in this podcast. And now being an actor myself and having a little more inside information on how these things work, I just thought they must have had to rehearse this many times to make it look so flawless. Or they took a lot of takes. But however they did it, they pulled it off. It's an entire tango, and they do it across a large dance floor, and their reactions, especially that of the young woman that Al Pacino is dancing with, it's just precious. It's a great movie too, so it's one to catch, but again, for a dance scene, that one is worth mentioning. And now onto my list. And just note, these are not in a particular order. There wasn't one that I necessarily liked over another. The first one on the list is the movie Shall We Dance? Now I'm talking specifically about the movie that came out in 1996 that is Japanese. That one is subtitled, but I really remember being moved by it. The story is about a successful man in Japan, and while he has success, he's not happy. And he takes up ballroom dancing, and this starts filling a void in his life. This movie won lots of awards all over the world, and at the awards at the Japanese Academy, it pretty much swept the awards. It got 14 awards, including Best Film, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Director, Best Screenplay. So it is worth checking out. Now, what often happens is in the United States, they will take movies that are successful in other countries and make them American. So this movie was remade in 2004, and it stars Richard Gere, Jennifer Lopez, and Susan Sarandon. And while it was nominated for a number of awards, it nowhere near saw the success of the Japanese version. If you haven't seen either of these movies, I would suggest only seeing the Japanese version or seeing the American version first and then the Japanese version. I remembered being sorely disappointed by the American version after seeing the Japanese version. Next on my list is the movie Save the Last Dance. This is the movie that I believe put Julia Stiles on the map. I don't recall there being another movie where she had quite the success as she did in this movie, but she became more of a household name. The movie also stars Sean Patrick Thomas and Kerry Washington. So this is early Kerry Washington, and we see how her career has grown. Not only is the dancing really fun to watch in this movie, but I appreciate that it brings in social justice issues. Julia Stiles is a teenager who relocates to Chicago, and at her new school, she has a new boyfriend who is a black teen, and so we get to see racial tensions play out, and dance is kind of an equalizer. This movie came out in 2001, and it's the first movie where I remember two kinds of dancing come together. She herself is trained in ballet, and then when she gets transferred to this other school on the other side of Chicago, she gets in with a crowd where hip-hop is the focus of their dance. And then creatively, we get to see her merge the two types of dance which serve her well. After this, it seems there was a spate of movies that dealt with different kinds of dance coming together. And it seems to me this movie is probably a model for that. As I've said, I've not seen a lot of dance movies, so I may be wrong about that, but this is the first movie that I remember this happening, and then seeing many sort of copycat movies after that. So if you want to see a movie that started a trend, this is a good one to see. Next on my list is the movie Billy Elliot. This is the version that came out in 2000. There is a live musical version that came out in 2014. I did not see that one. This is the story of a boy whose family is kind of falling apart. His dad is a widower, he's a minor, and there's an older son, who is Billy's older brother, and they are caught up in a strike around the mines. By the way, this takes place in England. And Billy has a lot of freedom, and one of the things that he is told to do is take a few cents and go take boxing lessons. He doesn't like boxing a whole lot, and on the other side of the gym from the boxing ring is a girls' ballet class. And he starts getting a little interested in what is going on in that class, and eventually he becomes involved. And he finds he has a love for ballet. And yet in a family of all men, except for an aging grandmother, and where there's a lot of upheaval in the family, this is a hard pill for his family to take. But it's a great movie about when you choose to follow your passion, despite anything that's in its way, and how it can possibly pay off for you. It's a super fun and uplifting movie. Next on my list, the movie Dirty Dancing. This is an oldie at this point. This originally came out in 1987, but it stirred up quite a following, and even today it seems people know the name Dirty Dancing or understand what Dirty Dancing is. In terms of dancing, this movie seems pretty groundbreaking. I don't know if the genre of Dirty Dancing existed before this movie, but it certainly took off after this movie. It's about a young woman who vacations every year in the Catskills with her family, and this one year she falls in love with the dance instructor. This movie stars the late Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. And it kind of gave people a new permission to have a different kind of intimacy when it comes to dancing. And I think this is the movie that really kickstarted Jennifer Grey's career. She'd been in some other movies before this, but she was more of a household name after this, similar to Julia Stiles with the movie Save the Last Dance. And I think it's interesting that it is dance movies that help kick off some of these actresses' careers. Whether it shows their versatility, or as I mentioned, with dancing, it creates sort of an uplifting feeling in a movie and helps them get recognized, I'm not sure. But I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence. Now, the next movie on this list, truth be told, I remember the movie. I do not remember seeing the movie, so I may not have. But the memory of even just the trailer really stands out. This stars two fantastic dancers, Mikhail Baryshnikov and Gregory Hines, and the movie is called White Nights. It's from 1985, and I rewatched the trailer, and it is definitely a dated movie. But the dance scenes, incredible. And interestingly, while a story can be dated, dancing doesn't seem to date itself. The premise of the story is that there is a dancer who defected to the United States from Russia, and he's on a flight, and the flight ends up having to land in Russia. And there's a question about whether he'll be able to return or not. And while Baryshnikov is a ballet dancer, Gregory Hines is a tap dancer. And dance again seems to be a common language that helps bond people here. I had the privilege years ago of actually being able to see Baryshnikov dance on stage. I don't know that I completely appreciated it at the time, but a memory I have is at one point it sounded like the air conditioning kicked on in the room. It was so loud, and it distracted me, and I was wondering what was going on. And then I realized Baryshnikov had made this incredible leap. It looked like he was floating in the air, and it wasn't an air conditioning sound. It was the gasps of everybody in the audience at this amazing feat that he had just done. There's a reason he became a world-renowned dancer. And so even just having a glimpse of him on the screen in this movie will give you a sense of his greatness. It is worth checking out. The next movie on my list is more recent. It's from 2014, and it's called 6 Dance Lessons in 6 Weeks. It stars Jenna Rowlands and Cheyenne Jackson. And her husband is the late actor-director John Cassavetes. She is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning actress, and she's also won 2 Golden Globes. And she's known for the films A Woman Under the Influence and Gloria. And more recently, she was in the movie The Notebook. In this movie, she plays a retired woman, and she decides that she wants to hire someone to give her dance instruction at home for 6 weeks. In comes the character that's played by Cheyenne Jackson. He's been on a lot of television, including The American Horror Story, 30 Rock, and Glee. And in this movie, Jenna Rowlands' character and his character start off in a pretty rocky relationship, but they find their way and they end up dancing together and forming a close friendship. This movie is really about the relationship of these two people, and yet dance is their common language. It's the thing that helps them come together, and it's a theme that we have seen over and over in the movies that have dance that we've looked at so far. Next on my list is a movie that came out in 2009 called Mao's Last Dancer. So this takes place in Maoist China, and it's at a time when a boy is taken from a family who are poor and live in a very rural area, and he is trained to become a dancer. He is very gifted, but he has some liberal ideas that do not fit too well in a communist country. And when an opportunity comes up for him to dance in America, he decides whether or not he's going to defect. There's a lot of really great ballet in this movie, and it is the path of dance that continues to be the motivation for all the decisions that are made. It's a biographical film, it's a drama, and I remember being pleasantly surprised by it. I didn't know what to expect when I saw it, and it swept me away. It showed me what life looked like in rural China, and provided a contrast of what life in America looked like. It's really a fascinating inside look at someone's life who is a dancer. I wasn't familiar with the Chinese actors. Chi Cao plays Li, the main character, but there is an American actor, Bruce Greenwood, and he has been in a lot of television and movies. He starred in the TV series Mad Men, and he was in a 2009 Star Trek movie. Likely he'll be a familiar face. Next on my list is another oldie, 1983, and it's the movie Flashdance starring Jennifer Beals. This is another movie where dance was kind of groundbreaking. Jennifer Beals plays a woman who has 2 jobs. She's a welder and she's an exotic dancer, and she wants to ultimately dance with a real dance company. This movie had made a big splash, and it even won an Oscar for the best music for an original song. Number 9 on the list is another oldie, but it's also, I think, considered kind of a classic, and it's Footloose, starring Kevin Bacon. There also seems to be a little theme here of someone relocating or going to a different place and learning about dance in that place. In the case of this movie, Kevin Bacon plays a teenager who moves from the city to a small town. And in this town, rock music, dancing, they are not allowed. But he is a clear rebel, and he starts making waves in the town. Dance seems to be the one way that he knows how to express himself, and he is determined to be able to maintain that. I checked out the trailer to this movie again, and it is a little bit dated, but the story still holds up. and the dancing is fantastic. The music too. It's really upbeat and it moves quickly. It's very easy to get caught up in. And the last on my list is a 2012 movie. It's called Silver Linings Playbook. This movie stars Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence and Robert De Niro. And Jennifer Lawrence won an Oscar for the best performance by an actress in a leading role for this movie. And Bradley Cooper, Robert De Niro, and director David O. Russell were all nominated for Oscars for the movie. In this movie, the dancing is kind of amateurish, and it's a riot. The protagonist makes a deal with this woman that she'll be his dance partner for an upcoming competition if she agrees to do a favor for him. It kind of spoofs some of these movies where the dance competition is a central part. It makes it a little more realistic in some ways, and I like that it also brings comedy into the mix. This movie also has a theme about mental illness, and I like that it's broader than just about dance, but dance does play an integral part. So that's our show. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the movies Feel the Beat, Strung Free Dance, and Yeh Ballet, as well as 10 of my favorite dance movies. And here's to these films offering you some inspiration. This is your host, Elizabeth Aaron, saying thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.